Hello, I'm Mario Toneguzzi, and I'm taking care of business. Joining me today is Dan Kelly, President and CEO of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. Thanks for joining us today, Dan.
Happy with you, Mario.
Well, CFIB today put out a preliminary results from its monthly business barometer. It's the lowest reading for the index since April of 2020. Tell me what's happening there and why that level of optimism is plunging for the small business sector in Canada.
Gosh, it is deeply worrisome. We've had some bad news over the last number of months, of course, with Omicron fears and restrictions, capacity restrictions, lockdowns in parts of the country. It's taking a huge toll on the optimism and confidence of the small business community, a huge toll on hiring plans as well. But yeah, we were even surprised to see just how deep the reduction is in business confidence. The lowest reading in the 12-month confidence, the confidence that businesses have for the year ahead, since essentially the start of the pandemic in March and April of 2020. And then even just for the short-term confidence for the 3 months ahead, I think this is our third lowest reading during the pandemic. There was another drop around Christmas time of 2020 and then into early 2021.
Yeah.
But confidence sinking like a stone. And on the hiring side, some bad news there too. A quarter of small businesses are looking to do layoffs right now.
Yeah.
I mean, we were dealing with a shortage of labor just in the last couple of months. That still exists, of course, for many businesses, but for many others, I talked to a business owner in New Brunswick who was laying off he has about 3 or 4 restaurants. He was laying off 100 people right before Christmas, saying how soul crushing that was.
And on the flip side of that, I noticed that the number of businesses that intend to hire is only 16%. So the very small amount of businesses are looking to expand their operations in any way.
This is just it. And, you know, I'm referring to this as the most dangerous economic point in the pandemic. You know, the Omicron may not be as dangerous from a health perspective, but certainly the restrictions being applied at this time is causing massive chaos for small business owners at a time when they're deeply vulnerable. I mean, unlike March and April of 2020, the business community has taken on average $170,000 in debt just to get through the last couple of years. So they're way more indebted than they were at the beginning of the pandemic. Secondly, many of these businesses are losing money every single day that they are open. And they've been doing that for such a long period of time. The other thing I don't think we can underestimate is just the emotional toll that this has taken, the mental health toll that this has taken, where business owners are saying, you know, at what point am I done? When do I have to just turn in the keys of the business? I'm really worried that is this point, that business owners are not seeing a pathway back to profitability, and they're going to throw in the towel because they don't have the confidence that we're going to get back on a firm track to recovery, given the government seem to be slapping on these restrictions whenever there's the first whiff of a problem.
Let's talk a little bit about you know, yourselves as an organization, and what are you guys asking and recommending that governments continue to do and do even more of here in the coming weeks?
Well, look, let me start with the good news. The good news is the government made 2 recent rounds of changes that will help. One, the federal government changed the formula for the wage and the rent subsidy. If your business is facing either a lockdown or a capacity restriction of 50% or greater, so many provinces have slapped on a 50% capacity restriction for restaurants. Ontario even did it for retailers. Those businesses now will be able to access in a better way the wage and the rent subsidy. They'll only need to see a 25% loss in revenues in order to qualify for a meaningful level of wage and rent help. They made that change right before Christmas, just immediately after passing their own legislation. So that was change number 1. Secondly, the government just in the last few days announced that they will delay the CEBA loan program, the repayment plan, until the end of 2023. That gives small firms more time to pay back that $60,000, $40,000 or $60,000 CEBA loan and still qualify for the forgivable chunk of $10,000 or $20,000.
Wow.
Those are two good steps. But as I said to the Deputy Prime Minister in our conversations and in a note I sent her just last night, it's not going to be enough. I mean, with the restrictions coming in place right now, we need to see provinces start to lift those restrictions at the absolute earliest possibility. Secondly, until the restrictions are lifted, and even then, until consumers come back to the table, we need to expand the scope of the program. So we're asking the feds to go back to the formula that was used in the, not the formula that was used at the very beginning of the pandemic, but in the summer of 2020, the government put in place a sliding scale. So your wage and rent subsidy was based on the amount of revenue loss that you were experiencing. That, we believe, is the right formula, but it should be covering businesses of all sizes of losses, whether that's a 5, a 10, a 20, or a 50% loss. Secondly, we're asking the government, the federal government, to reopen the CEBA loan program, add another $20,000 to the loan overall, and increase the percentage forgiven to 50%. Calling on the provinces to reinstate their provincial subsidy programs. We have to remember that it isn't just the businesses that are being affected by capacity restrictions or lockdowns that are suffering. People are just staying home because at the advice of the public health officials. Just the panic that has been created over Omicron is causing sales to sink.
Yeah, exactly. Let's talk about restrictions and lockdowns, obviously across the country. Excuse me, it's different depending on where you are.
Yes.
You know, Ontario, Quebec, I think there's no secret there that they're probably some of the strictest there in terms of some of the measures taking place. What's your thoughts on this whole idea of restrictions and lockdowns? And, you know, we may come through this again, you know, we may, you know, go through this and be on the other side where things are back into a little bit of stability here in a couple of weeks. But what happens to the next variant, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, I hate to bring that up, but what happens if there's another variant? Like, can we keep going to the tried and not so much true method of instituting lockdowns and restrictions to deal with this?
Mario, you're 100% right. I mean, I've been saying now for the last number of months, we can't keep doing this. We can't just keep throwing restrictions, locking down, closing schools, locking down businesses indiscriminately, hoping that this is going to lead to better protection. I mean, especially in the light of the Omicron variant, which seems to be acting very differently than earlier rounds of the pandemic. Yes, we're all concerned about healthcare capacity. And I know that that has been the defining issue for many governments is we have to do something because otherwise the hospitals are going to be overburdened and we're not going to get the emergency care that people need.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you, I mean, other countries are finding other solutions. They're not, yes, lockdowns have been used pretty much everywhere, but that tool has been set aside in most countries around the world. The US has not returned, even in the heavily democratic states, you know, that no state is returning to blanket lockdowns the way or capacity restrictions, even the way that we have in Canada, certainly the way that we're experiencing here in Ontario, where every second business is locked down at the moment. We've got to ask the question, when are we going to be able to pivot and just say, look, this is endemic. We're going to have to figure out a way to live with COVID in the workplace, in society, and find other public health measures to try to address it. And I have to tell you, Western Canada, Saskatchewan, Alberta, British Columbia, different stripes of governments, they seem to be trying to keep the economy more open. Manitoba East, they have been working to throw restrictions in place. New Brunswick's in lockdown, Quebec's in lockdown, Ontario's in lockdown. The business community is not going to survive. And if we do that, if we make the choice that that's the only option, but to lock down or severely restrict businesses, nothing other than 100% capacity, 100% financial help will make a difference in terms of getting these businesses across. I mean, these businesses are hanging on by their fingernails.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks very much, Dan, for joining me again.
Anytime, Mario.
All right, super. That was Dan Kelly, President CEO of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. I'm Mario Toneguzzi, and this has been Taking Care of Business. Thanks for joining us today.